Alright, now we're going to delve into making a thumbnail for our video. It seems like a complicated task at first, but once we get going, it should kind of click with you and show you how simple in a way it is. So first of all, you're going to need some kind of image editing software. I'm going to be using Adobe Photoshop for this tutorial. You can use GIMP, you can use whatever program you have, and just try to follow along as closely as possible. So we're going to actually go into our document or our Photoshop and open up a new document, clicking on File, clicking on New, and we're actually going to want to go with HD resolutions here, so 1920 by 1080. You can go 720p if you want, but I recommend going 1920 by 1080. And the main reason we're going HD here is pretty much for resolutions. People have all kinds of different resolutions out there. If they're going to pull up your thumbnail with a big monitor or TV, you want that thumbnail to scale up so when they see it, it's not completely grainy or desaturated or blurry. So that's why we go HD for the thumbnail. Now that we've opened up our document, we have a big white screen here, and we don't really want that. So in order to fix that, we're going to have to add a background image. There's all kinds of different images out there you can use. There's stock photos. You can use Google as a reference. Type in whatever you're looking for on Google related to your video and use something like that. But I'm actually going to pull an image directly from my video. In order to do that, you're actually going to have to open up your video. So I do have mine opened up here, and we're actually going to scrub through to find something that we like, something that grabbed your attention. And right here, I noticed that the light bulb is exploding, so I'm actually going to use this scene. You can keep going and try to find something that you think is an attention grabber on your video, but I'm going to stick with this one right here. So we could just go ahead and select or pause the video right here, and then we're going to open up our snipping tool. Snipping tool comes typically installed with your Windows PC, and then once we select or open it up, it's going to give us the option to actually snip this image. So we're just going to select what image we want, and that looks pretty good right there. And once we select it, we get the option to save it. I have a similar image already in my Photoshop, so I'm not going to worry about saving, but you will have to save it and then open it up in Photoshop yourself. Once we close this, we'll open up Photoshop and move to the left, and this is my image. And alright, so now that we have our image right here, the best way to get it from point A to point B into our document is to do Control A, Control C, and then Control V to paste it. Once it's in our document, you notice that it doesn't really line up with the outside edges, so we're just going to do Control T to transform, and then drag it on up, and then drag it down. And there. It looks pretty good now that it's completely taking up the canvas. From this point, I usually like to add text either to the left or right of the image. We'll go to the right this time. It might be easier actually to go to the left because there's already some nice blank space there. So we'll just move the image this way. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend if you have a singular image that you move it and make it the focus of attention. That way you can add text to the right or left of it. Now that we did this, we notice that we have a pretty big blank space right here. And in order to remedy that, we're going to open up our Clone Stamp tool. This is a really nice tool to actually add on to backgrounds, and the way you do that is holding Alt and then left clicking. As you can see, it got us a nice little selection of the black background, so we can just kind of paint over the top here. I would recommend Alt clicking over and over, that way you don't have matched up backgrounds the whole time. You want to be you want to make this completely different pretty much, so that looks pretty good. And now from this point, we're going to go back down to our background and make this a black background just for the sake of this thumbnail, just in case anything leaks through the top. Now that we did that, we're just going to right click on our layer and merge down. This makes it so this is our background. We don't really want it a locked background, so Control A, Control C, Control V. This pretty much Control A to select, Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. That way we can get rid of the background tag. The background tag makes it so the image is locked and you can't hide it. But now that it's a layer, we can actually hide it and move it around to do all kinds of cool stuff with it. Alright, now that we have the image that we want and the space we need for text, we're going to go ahead and add a border to this. And to do this, we're going to double click on the layer, go down the stroke, and then select inside, and then give it a decent stroke here. You want to select the color as well. I'm going to make mine white. I'll drop down the stroke a little bit so it's not extremely big. Alright, so now that we have the border, we can click on OK. If you want, you can go to blend mode, go to overlay. You can mess with the border or the stroke all kinds of different ways. Then click on OK. And now that we have this, the next logical step is to add text to it. You don't have to add text to your thumbnails, but it does grab attention from people looking or browsing through all kinds of different videos. So I do recommend adding some kind of text to your thumbnails. For this one, we're just going to type in something simple like light bulb smash. And black's a little hard to see, so we're just going to go Control A, click on this little thing right here, and then we can select what different font color we want. So we're just going to go with white just because it shows up. And then we're going to drop it down a little bit. Make sure it's proportionate, make sure it lines up nice and even. I like to make sure that the top to the text looks about equal to the bottom to the text, or to the border. And yeah, it looks good. That looks pretty good. One thing we'll notice right away is that smash kind of sticks out more so than the other two words. So in order to kind of fix that, we're going to highlight bulb, go to our little character panel here, and then select a different margin between how the letters are spaced. So this one's probably going to take a 300 or something, maybe even bigger, 350, 360. We might have to actually go to 400. 450, 460. It's being a little stubborn, but it's all about trial and error, so make sure to get it right. And then this looks all right. It looks pretty even with the smash part. It might actually need a little more, but we're just going to leave it how it is. And then you go up to light and do the same thing. It's not going to need 400 though, so 350. 350 is even overdoing it. So 315 looks good. Alright, now that we did that, we can move on to the next step. I actually think the font's a little too big, so to kind of fix that, we're going to select the font layer here, Control T, and then we can just hold Shift and then drag this, and it will keep everything proportionate and in line. And that looks good. So then go back to our select tool and we can just drag it to where we want it. Next thing I would recommend is using this zoom tool a lot. The main reason behind that is you want to zoom out to pretty much the view people will get when they're watching a video and see your thumbnail on the sidebar. That looks pretty good. There's a lot of empty space though, so to kind of fix that, we're going to add a new layer to the top, select our brush tool, and just kind of brush over the top. Now it's a little too thick and too wide, so we're just going to go Control T, and once again, Control T is our friend, and we're going to adjust it to make it a little bit smaller. Then you can go to layer, duplicate layer, and then just move on down. That looks pretty good. So we're going to zoom out again to get another perspective of what people will see. I would recommend doing this over and over until you get something you like. Overall, the thumbnail is looking pretty good. So there's one more thing I'm actually going to do. I'm going to add a font style to this, or a style layer to my font and to my overline and my underline. And the way to go about doing this is selecting what you want to add a style to and then clicking on the style you want to add. Typically Photoshop has these ones pre-installed, but there is a whole bunch of different other ones out there on the internet that you can install yourself. As you can see, I have a whole bunch of different ones. As we click on them, I'm actually going to use this one. This is a custom-made one that I made specifically for this thumbnail. As you can see, it kind of matches the whole light bulb scene, so I'm actually going to include this one and a couple of other ones in the download section so you can download them yourself and apply them to your own thumbnail if you want. Now that we added the style to the text, we can go up to our overline and our underline and apply the same style. It's as simple as just clicking on the layer and then clicking on the style. One thing I noticed right away is that the overline and the underlines, they kind of stick out a little too much. I don't really like that, so I'm just going to shift click both layers and then adjust the opacity to make them a little less noticeable and make the font stick out a little more. And that's the big thing about thumbnails. You want the font, you want the image to stick out the most so people click on it. And then we'll zoom out a little bit more. And that looks pretty good. Another thing we can do if we want to is to go back to our image file, double click, and then add a color overlay, and then go to blend mode, select color, or we can select a variety of different blend modes if we want. And that looks kind of cool. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to stick with color. We're going to select a color that looks somewhat reminiscent of what was already there. So we're going to go with a blue color and then click OK. Actually, before we click OK, we can mess with the opacity a little bit to make some of the original image stick through. If you just want to give it a tint of a color, this is the best way to go about doing that. And then click OK. So this is a basic tutorial on how to make a pretty nice looking thumbnail that will grab people's attention. A couple of things I would recommend while making a thumbnail: make sure to use colors that stick out, like white, light blue, hot pink, hot green or hot lime green. Those types of colors will get people to click on your videos just simply because they grab attention. Same with thumbnail images. Make sure to grab an image that sticks out, an action sequence, or say you're doing a prank video, make sure to include an actual still frame of the prank so people know what they're clicking and they'll actually want to click the video or the thumbnail themselves. So those are just some recommendations. I might do a video on more advanced tactics in terms of creating a thumbnail. I do hope you enjoyed this more basic version, and I will talk to you guys in the next section.